Today, Australia offers a helping hand to Vanuatu after one of the most powerful tropical cyclones to lash the Pacific.
We are deeply concerned by reports that lives have been lost in northern Vanuatu.
Also ahead, the government promises independent reviews of pension rates in its latest effort to win support for proposed changes.
We need to get the rate of growth under control so we can make sure that the pension is sustainable and there for future generations.
A funeral held for an Australian man killed while fighting against Islamic State militants in Syria. And Australia off to a bright start against Scotland, despite gloomy conditions in Hobart. Hello, Rachel Pupazzoni with ABC News. Let's take a quick look at tomorrow's weather first. Showers and a windy day for Sydney, a shower or two for Perth and Darwin. Darwin can also expect a possible shower for Melbourne and Canberra, partly cloudy in Adelaide and Hobart, and sunny in Brisbane. At least 4 people have died in Vanuatu and 1 in Papua New Guinea after one of the strongest tropical cyclones to lash the South Pacific. The Foreign Minister Julie Bishop has offered assistance to Vanuatu amid reports more than 40 people have perished in central Panama province. Power and communications are down in most areas, and aid agencies say access has so far proved extremely difficult, making it impossible to assess the full devastation. Ms Bishop says there are no reports of any Australians missing or injured in Vanuatu.
Our thoughts today are with the people of the Pacific who are facing the impact of Tropical Cyclone Pam. We are deeply concerned by reports that lives have been lost in northern Vanuatu. They are still unconfirmed, but we are deeply concerned by those reports. The cyclone has hit Vanuatu. There are destructive winds, rain, flooding, landslides, sea surges and very rough seas, and the storm is exceedingly destructive there. We also know that Tropical Cyclone Pam will impact on Tuvalu, Kiribati, Fiji and Solomon Islands. In relation to Vanuatu, Australia has a crisis response team ready to go to assist our High Commission in Port Vila. Our High Commissioner, Jeremy Brewer, has spoken to Prime Minister Natuman and offered Australia's assistance, and that we stand ready to support Vanuatu in this time of need. The travel advisory for Vanuatu has been revised to reconsider your need to travel. The airport in Port Vila is closed and communications are proving to be rather difficult. We have contacted our partners in the NGO community, Red Cross, our partner nation New Zealand, and we stand ready to assist. We have medical and search and rescue teams on standby. The Solomon Islands has requested some assistance in reconnaissance and gaining some post-cyclone imagery, and the RAAF has assisted in that regard with our AP3C Orion ready to continue to assist. We will be prepared to send people as and when they are required. We do, of course, have an Australian Civilian Corps officer working now in the National Disaster Management Office in Vanuatu.
The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon says he's met with the President of Vanuatu to discuss the situation.
Tropical Cyclone Pam is bearing down on Vanuatu and beyond. Overnight, the eye of the storm passed very close to the capital, Port Vila. We are not yet clear on the impact and scope of the disaster, but we fear the destruction and damage could be widespread.
Cyclone warnings for Perth's metropolitan region have been cancelled after Cyclone Olwen was downgraded to a tropical low. A severe weather warning remains in force for central and eastern parts of the southwest land division and south of the Gascoyne. Damaging winds and heavy rainfall are expected east of Moora through to Dalwallinu and Albany. Meanwhile, efforts are underway to restore power to thousands of homes after 145 km/h winds brought down power lines and tore off roofs. The federal government has offered to set up a 3-yearly independent review of pension rates in a bid to win support for changes to the way payments are calculated. It's all part of proposed changes to link the pension with inflation rather than wages. But critics say the change would leave pensioners worse off in the long run. Political reporter Jane Norman is at Parliament House in Canberra.
The government wants to change the rate at which the age pension is indexed. So it wants to basically peg the increases to inflation rather than the higher rate of the average weekly wage. Now, this has been a rather contentious measure. We've heard from seniors groups that this would leave pensioners worse off. And so far, the Senate has blocked this proposal. So Scott Morrison is trying to find a compromise. And today, his latest solution is to set up this panel, which would review the pension every 3 years. Now, it'd be an independent panel. It would basically review the adequacy of the pension rates and make recommendations to the government about what it should do. Now, the government would make those recommendations public, but it would not be compelled to act on them. Now, as I said, there have been concerns that changing the rate of increase for the age pension would leave seniors worse off, but the government argues that something needs to be done. More than 2 million people aged over 65 receive the aged pension each year. It costs the government more than $40 billion a year, so it argues that the system needs to be made more sustainable, but it is being blocked in the Senate, so Scott Morrison is trying to work with the crossbench to find a compromise solution, and here is how he explained it at his press conference today.
What we're discussing with the crossbench is a new option which would see a safety net for the pension, which means every 3 years there would be an independent review of the adequacy of the pension to make sure that it keeps up with community living standards. And in between times, those 3 years, then the pension would increase in line with inflation with the cost of living. This is a very serious issue for the future of the country. The pension is currently being received by around 2.5 million Australians, and it is costing taxpayers, obviously, significantly in the order of over $40 billion, and that is scheduled to rise over the next 10 years to more than almost $70 billion. And so we need to get the rate of growth under control so we can make sure that the pension is sustainable and there for future generations.
Well, we have heard from some seniors groups who are reacting pretty cautiously to this proposal. They say they're willing to work with the Social Services Minister, Scott Morrison, but they are concerned ultimately that the policy remains on the table to reduce the rate at which the age pension will increase from the year 2017. Now, Labor remains firmly opposed to that policy, and so it's labelled today's announcement, this compromise announcement, a mean trick by the minister. Here's what Jenny Macklin had to say.
Now, Labor will not support any cuts to pension indexation. Scott Morrison's latest idea is just a mean trick, trying to say to pensioners that they might get a change over 3 years. Labor will not support any cut to pension indexation because that would leave pensioners worse off.
Now, without the support of Labor, the government is, of course, negotiating with crossbench senators. It'll need the votes of 6 of the 8 crossbench senators to get this policy through, but at the moment it still just remains a proposal on the table, nothing firm from the government just yet.
The 2 Australian drug smugglers on death row in Indonesia could have their executions delayed for months, while other inmates pursue lengthy court appeals. The Attorney-General, Muhammad Prasettos, told Indonesia's respected journalism group Tempo the next round of executions will be delayed until all of the condemned inmates have finished their appeals. Andrew Chan and Myuran Sukumaran are being held in isolation on the prison island at Nusa Kambangan in preparation for execution. Chan and Sukumaran's lawyers returned to a Jakarta court on Thursday to challenge their death sentences. Kurdish fighters in northern Syria have held a funeral for Australian recruit Ashley Johnston, who was killed during an assault against Islamic State fighters last month. Mr Johnston, a former army reservist originally from Queensland, became the first Westerner killed during a skirmish between the YPG and Islamic State near Tel Hamis. Vision obtained by the ABC shows dozens of mourners carrying a coffin, displaying a photograph of Mr Johnston and chanting slogans. A representative from the YPG says the body has been transferred to the Turkish side of the border. Iraqi forces are waiting for reinforcements before continuing a major offensive to reclaim the city of Tikrit from Islamic State fighters. If government troops can wrest full control, it will be the first time they've won back a city from IS militants since they overran large areas of the country last year. This report from the BBC's Jonathan Beale.
Iraq's already got rid of one tyranny, now it's trying to defeat another. This was once a guest house of Saddam Hussein. Its more recent occupants were fighters from the so-called Islamic State. Now it's been taken over by Shia militia who have the prize of Tikrit in their sights. The city's shelled buildings on the horizon is the proof the assault's well underway. It's a battle that'll help decide the course of this war. If the Sunni extremists can be defeated here in a Sunni heartland, they'll have suffered a strategic and psychological blow. But they're not giving up yet.
70% of the city centre is controlled by Islamic State. We will liberate the rest of the city by surrounding it, and then our forces will enter, even if it involves street-to-street fighting.
At a nearby hospital, casualties were mounting. Within an hour, we witnessed half a dozen new arrivals from the front line. While we were filming, one of them died. These are the civilians who've been caught in the middle. Sunni villagers who feared the brutality of Islamic State, but who are now having to rely mostly on Shia militia for their own protection.
They have done no harm to us. They looked after us by giving us water, food. We were under siege.
The Shia militia want to show the world this is a nation united against Islamic State. While we were filming, they delivered fresh supplies of food. But there have also been recent allegations of atrocities committed by Shia on Sunni. Even if Islamic State can be defeated, this country will still have to bridge a sectarian divide.
A video has emerged showing how a people smuggler helped teenage recruits get into Syria to join Islamic State fighters. A Turkish broadcaster has released pictures of a man apparently organising travel for 3 British schoolgirls crossing from Turkey into Syria.
I forget to give you the passport. It's nice.
Turkey says the man has been arrested and is a spy for a country in the US-led coalition. Canada has denied reports he was working for them. There's media speculation Turkey is using the claim to deflect criticism that it didn't do enough to stop the runaway girls. A 20-year-old man has undergone surgery after police shot him in the leg and hand in Darwin overnight. Emergency services were called to a house in Lenya to find the man agitated and armed with a knife. Officers say they negotiated with him for a long time, several times of which he came at them with a knife. He was eventually tasered but not controlled, running back into the house. The man then ran out of the house at a police officer and a dog and was shot. The man was rushed to hospital, where he remains in a stable condition. An American tourist has been rescued after falling from a cliff in the Blue Mountains west of Sydney. The 25-year-old spent the night in the bush with a broken ankle and several broken ribs after rescuers were unable to winch her out late yesterday. It's believed she slipped from a walking track, falling about 15 metres and rolling another 20. After weather delays this morning, she was winched out by a helicopter about 9:30. Next week marks 1 year since the Ebola outbreak began in Africa, which has now claimed nearly 10,000 lives. Scientists recently discovered exactly where the epidemic began, tracing it back to a 2-year-old boy who died in a village in Guinea. Now locals are taking measures to make sure the virus doesn't return.
These people aren't taking any chances. It's been reported that locals ate bats from this tree and contracted Ebola virus, beginning what has grown into the worst outbreak of the virus ever recorded.
The bats brought the Ebola in this village, according to the white man and the government. As the head of the young people in this village, we have decided to burn this tree so that no bat will bring Ebola.
The government issued a press release saying that Ebola was first detected in bats from this tree, and his son was the first person to contract the disease and die in the current outbreak. Other members of his family also died.
In the beginning, when my children started dying and my wife, I doubted myself and I thought they were killed by tradition. Although later, the white man say it's Ebola, and when the Ebola entered my village, I was the first person to lose all my family. My one-year son died, my daughter and wife too.
According to the World Health Organization, the Ebola virus has killed 10,000 people, mostly in West Africa, with Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone being the worst hit. A vaccine is being tested, and it's modelled on the ring vaccination approach, which was used to eradicate smallpox in the 1970s. Investigators look at what's called the index case and then find all of those who have come into contact with that person. But there are challenges. Both Guinea and Sierra Leone are still reporting dozens of new cases every week, and the number of Ebola deaths taking place outside of hospitals remains high. And that suggests that people are wary of seeking help or are hiding patients.
After almost 3 long decades, a campaign to free a female gorilla from the rooftop of an old Bangkok shopping mall is gaining momentum. The owners of the lonely animal argue a move would be too risky, but Thai authorities are now conceding something should be done. Southeast Asia correspondent Samantha Hawley reports from Bangkok.
On the lower levels, it's a Bangkok mall like any other. But a ride up the escalators brings the unexpected. A high-rise zoo where hundreds of animals, large and small, call one floor of a shopping mall home. This baboon has lived like this for 20 years. Around the corner is Bua Noi, a female gorilla that's been caged here since 1987.
The high-rise zoo is not the proper place to place wildlife. Do I see what people do not see?
The name means little lotus, but weighing in at 160 kilograms, the animal is anything but. Her silverback mate used to share the enclosure, but died 10 years ago, leaving a social animal alone.
There is no regulation on how big the cage should be for a monkey, a snake or a bird. There are no rules on this yet.
After more than 20 years, we've never had any problems with infection. The animals live here happily. You can see, she's running around.
The animal's vet argues a move back to Earth could lead to deep anxiety and even death.
It's not a place for wildlife. No nature, no trees, nothing you can create to be as close to nature.
And then there's the fire risk. Thailand's authorities have ordered the animals be moved by June, but acknowledge they have limited power to make that happen.
We must admit they take care of the gorilla's health very well. It's the only gorilla in Thailand. They spent a lot of money to get this gorilla. It's their asset.
When it first opened 3 decades ago, it was a popular attraction. Today, the owners can't even make a profit, which raises the question, if no one visits, why is the concrete jungle zoo still operating?
The owner argues Bua Noi is safer here than in Africa, but surely this magnificent animal is in need of a new home. Samantha Hawley, ABC News, Bangkok.
South African doctors have declared a world's first penis transplant a success. It's the second time the procedure was attempted, but the first time in history that a successful long-term result has been achieved. The 9-hour operation was performed on a 21-year-old man whose organ was amputated in a botched circumcision ritual. A year ago, it was in crisis as Ukraine descended into revolution. But now, its former territory of Crimea is booming. That's because the peninsula on the Black Sea is attracting tourists from around the world. Locals say when Kiev held sway, it was usually a bit dull in the off-season and most of the tourists weren't coming with full pockets. But that's no longer the case.
It's a peaceful place, quaint, picturesque and popular with families. Crimea on the Black Sea, the new tourism favourite for rich Russians.
This year we have 40% more tourists than we had this time last year. What does this tell us? It means Crimea is once again remembered because it was pretty much forgotten by the Russian market.
And it's a far cry from a year ago, when all this belonged to Ukraine. But the Ukrainian revolution led Crimea into turmoil. Unhappy with Kiev, pro-Russian demonstrations ensued. Russian troops took over, and then Crimea declared independence. Russian critics were unhappy about that, but tourists, at least these days, don't seem to care.
We came here last year and now there are many more people. We arrived yesterday. Today we came out on the embankment and were surprised at how many people there were.
Some say there is paradise in the Krasnodar region, but no, really, the paradise is here. It's super great. Everything is great.
Well, not everything. You still can't use MasterCard or Visa, and the ferry from the mainland only runs in good weather. That's why Russia wants to build a bridge to the peninsula.
Because there is this situation with the ferry, some people have to cancel their trips. And some people complain about the hotels and say we are about 10 to 20 years behind Russian resorts.
But locals say if in a year this place can go from Crimean crisis to hotspot, it won't be long before they're all swimming in its riches. Soraya Lenny, ABC News.
Australia is taking on Scotland in their last pool match of the Cricket World Cup in Hobart. Australia won the toss and sent Scotland into pat, and soon after, paceman Mitchell Starc had his first wicket.
That's an edge. Steve Smith's got that one. Very safe pair of hands at third slip. Mitchell Starc, he's in terrific form with the ball.
Scotland faces an uphill battle to win their first match during this World Cup. They're currently on 3 for 43 after 9 overs. England has finished its Cricket World Cup campaign with a rain-interrupted 9-wicket win over Afghanistan. Batting first in the dead rubber, Afghanistan fell to 4 for 34 before steadying to reach 111 from the 36 overs that the weather allowed. More rain reduced England's target to 101 off 25 overs, and they did it at a canter. Ian Bell finished 52 not out. Despite the win, England will head home early from arguably its worst World Cup. In the NRL, a double to new fullback Brett Morris helped Canterbury to a 32 points to 12 victory over Parramatta. Despite losing key point scorer Samir Radradra to a knee injury, the Eels took the lead early in the second half after Manu Ma'u struck twice. But the Dogs snatched momentum back with Sam Parrott, one of 3 Bulldogs to score a double. And Morris crossed late to seal the 12-point win.
Brett Morris will go all the way. Brett Morris scores his second try tonight. His third for Canterbury.
In Cronulla, the Sharks led 2-0 at half-time, but 2 lucky tries after the break helped the Broncos to a scrappy 10 points to 2 win to open their account for 2015. The Melbourne Rebels survived a nervy final few minutes to beat the Western Force in Perth. The visitors raced out of the blocks with Mike Harris scoring in the first 5 minutes before Mitch Inman put Dom Schipperle through to give the Rebels a 15-0 lead after half an hour. The Force fought back with Tetra Faulkner crossing to set up a grandstand finish, but the Rebels held on to win 21 points to 17, while the Hurricanes remain undefeated with Julian Sevilla crossing twice in their 30-23 win over the Blues.
Happy to get to the win, but the Force, they kept us going to the 80 minutes, and that's the kind of footy you want to play. We're working into this 4-week block we've got to the next bye, and yeah, 1 from 4 so far. We're happy with that.
Let's take a look at the satellite. Ex-tropical cyclone Olwen is producing rain over Western Australia, while on the other side of the country, tropical cyclone Nathan is generating heavy rain and thunderstorms over far northern Queensland. Looking around the country for tomorrow, it'll be mostly sunny in Queensland, hot in the west with the occasional shower on the coast and a possible storm in the far northeast. Mostly sunny across New South Wales, warm in the east with the occasional shower expected in the southeast. A cool change and showers are forecast for the south of Victoria, but it should be mostly sunny and warm in the north of the state. Early morning showers about the south and east coasts of Tasmania, then mostly fine during the day. Sunny in South Australia with a slight chance of light morning showers about southern coasts and ranges, very warm in the north. In Western Australia, showers and storms are expected across the southwest as ex-tropical cyclone Olwen continues to move. Thunderstorms over the north of the Kimberley, while in the Northern Territory isolated showers and storms are expected in northern and western parts, mostly sunny elsewhere. Looking ahead to Monday's forecast for the capital cities, partly cloudy with a possible shower in Brisbane, cloudy in Sydney, mostly sunny in Melbourne, partly cloudy in Hobart and Adelaide, a possible shower for Perth and storms for Darwin. The largest art exhibition featuring one of the world's most prolific names in film is showing at Brisbane's Gallery of Modern Art. It's the first time work by David Lynch, the man behind the TV series Twin Peaks, goes on display in Australia.
The works explore themes of industry, the extraordinary and the unconscious mind. David Lynch, Between Two Worlds, is the first exhibition of its kind in Australia.
This isn't a complete retrospective, but it brings together more than 200 works that cover all of the different areas of David's practice.
The American is most famous for his work in film and movies such as Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive.
Mulholland Drive, that's where I was going.
He's also the creator of TV series Twin Peaks, with a new season under development.
One of the earliest of David's films I saw was Elephant Man, and like all of my university friends, I eagerly awaited each episode of Twin Peaks.
But this exhibition is about the artist, a man who developed a love of painting as a young boy.
All I wanted to do was be a painter, and I still really basically all I want to do is paint.
This is one of the exhibition's key features. A dark and gloomy living room has been created as an installation of one of David Lynch's paintings from 1977. The show details his 50 years as a visual artist.
To be able to experience the Lynch world between the Cinematheque program that he's best known for and this artistic creative side that he's much less well known for is something that we're incredibly privileged to be presenting in Brisbane.
The exhibition runs until June and has already set a new Goma record for pre-sale tickets. Louisa Rebgetz, ABC News, Brisbane.
Thanks for your company here on ABC News. I'm Rachel Pupazzoni. A reminder though that you can keep up to date on all the stories we're following by logging onto our website, the address abc.net.au/news. I'll be back in a moment with an update of the headlines. Then it's time for Landline.